Welcome back to another episode of Your Platform Podcast. I'm here today with a guest, Chris Aledia, a young man, gentleman that I'm very impressed with, man. We came across each other through Instagram. We met about a month ago now, probably.
Yeah.
You know, we've run into each other a couple times through, you know, the networking groups and
seminars,
seminars and being in similar professions. But we had the opportunity to really kind of get to know each other for a little bit playing golf. And, Chris, what I think you're doing for Operation Fresh Start is amazing. Keep working at it. I'm very excited to hear about your journey. And the purpose of my show is to give people an opportunity to talk about themselves so other people get to know you. And that's why I did this show. So Chris, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. So listen, I want to jump right into a couple of things here. So, you're young, you're 22 years old. You studied at UConn, graduated a degree in economics. And I want to know why economics? What was, what caused you to take that route? And, what are you hoping to see in the future for you and your career?
Yeah. So I think ever since I was little, I was always centered around everything finance or numbers related. And I think that ultimately led me to a degree in economics. I think where it really shined was, or made me realize that I would want to take that path was in high school. I went to a trade school, Norwich Tech, and the trade that I specialized in was marketing management and entrepreneurship. It's called business administration now. But it was incredible. It just gave me the opportunity to really just be myself and communicate with people. Sure. And I loved that. So by the time I needed to transition from high school to college, I was like, ooh, what degree do I want? Right. I initially wanted to go into finance, but the finance school of business at UConn was so competitive, ended up not working out. So the next best thing was economics, which I'm so happy that I chose. Yeah. And it was just a field that I was naturally fascinated with. I love numbers. I love working. I mean, the economy, just from a numbers perspective, interests me. Yeah. There's so many different angles to look at it through. So it was sitting in class, just learning those was awesome. Yeah. And it just gave me just a nice, it just fed my desire to be around what I love.
What's I think, are you considered Gen Z?
I am.
You are considered Gen Z. What's that perspective of the economy now for yourself and Gen Zers, just in general? Is it doom and gloom, or is it like the future looks bright?
Honestly, it's tough. I would say more doom and gloom, just by how things are now. Like housing prices are so high, mortgage rates were recently so high. So, being young and then growing up, we're all in our, early to mid 20s now. We want to live that dream of owning our house. Yeah. And for a lot of people, it's just unattainable. Yeah. Looking out into the future, it's like, where do you go from there? Sure. And for me, I think, speaking for Gen Z, it's just a big question mark. Sure. They don't know what's going to happen. They just have to put themselves in the best position financially to get there. Yeah. So I think, there's nothing certain. It's just a huge question mark.
When you get out of college, so it was last year, right? 2 years ago? Yeah. Last year,
2023 in May.
What's going on in your mind? Because I remember when I graduated a long time ago. I graduated in 2011, and I remember literally the last day of school, I'm thinking like, now what? Yeah. What's I'm gonna go play professional baseball? Probably not. I'm gonna keep trying. Am I gonna, find a job? And I was working retail and kind of just didn't know. From your perspective, you were in school during a global pandemic. I would say the last 4 years have been pretty chaotic. The last maybe 8 years have probably been, a roller coaster for you. Yeah. What kind of emotions go on in a young man's mind, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20? What's going on in your mind with how volatile things have been during the last, 4-6 years?
I mean, it was tough. And when I say tough, it was only tough for this past year when reality set in. I think when you were that young, or specifically me, being from 15, being a freshman in high school, going all the way to graduating as a senior in college, we had that support system of education. which I love. I wish I could be in school forever. I love learning. I love being around people.
Sure.
But you know, going through that time, it was easy, just because every day you're surrounded by friends, and you know, schoolwork was stressful, semi-stressful. But then as soon as I graduated college, reality set in. I didn't know where to go. You know, for all 4 years of high school, I had my mind set on becoming or going into insurance on the more corporate side.
Did you? I didn't realize that.
I didn't. No, that was my goal. I have a buddy of mine who was in insurance. He works for Travelers, and you know, he was a big role model for me. And I wanted to, you know, going through college, I wanted to go into finance and basically follow his footsteps into insurance. And it just ended up not working out. By the time I graduated college, the hiring market was out of whack.
Right.
So it was tough to find a job. Everyone was hiring, but at the same time, no one was getting hired.
Sure.
That was the feeling. So it was tough, and I'm so thankful now that I'm in the mortgage industry. I had it was like a miracle. While I was going through college, and I think I told you this before, I did landscaping for my current boss.
Right.
And I would just always hear him on the phone, and he was talking business, talking those numbers. And I was just fascinated by it. So I would eavesdrop in. Maybe I shouldn't have, I don't know. But it was interesting to me. So eventually I graduated college. I didn't do landscaping for him that year. So I was like, oh, that's a path just out of question for me. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
But he ended up running into my sister and my brother-in-law at a farmer's market. And he was like, hey, how's Chris doing? And they were like, you know, he's kind of stressed. He's trying to find a job. And he just said, give me a call. Have him give me a call. So I gave him a call, and the rest is history. He paid for my education and my licensing to get through it. And I ended up making it work. And he got me a job at where I work now, Total Mortgage.
Awesome. Well, I'm curious, what's the process for getting a license in mortgage? I know for me, I had to just take a test, one test. You know, studies similar. That's
about it. It's a low barrier of entry. It was one test. You have to do 20 hours of preliminary education, and then you take the big test. You have to score at least a 75.
How many questions?
A lot. There is a number. It's like specifically organized to know it. I don't know. It was a lot.
I think our test was 145 questions.
I want to say it was around there too.
And we needed I think it was a 70. When I took it, they just said pass, and they didn't say a number. I wanted to know a number selfishly, just to be like boastful of like, hey, you know, I got 98.
You never know what you got?
Definitely. So funny story. So when I first got into the industry in 2015, they did give us the pass fail score. I had to take it twice. I actually ended up failing it the first. I hadn't studied for tests. At that point, I was out of college for 4 years. So I hadn't studied. I just kind of hanging out, and you know, I had a girlfriend, now wife at the time, but just living life, chilling. So, but then, so I think I got like a 57 on the first run. But I went back. So after I finished the test, I went back and changed all the answers, like everything. I was like, I basically second guessed it. So doing that,
that's where you mess up.
That's where I messed up. So then I went and took it again and didn't change anything, and I passed with like a 78 or something like that. And then I had to recently take a test for my commercial license. So I had to take the entire thing all over again. I did this in June, the end of June. I just recently, and it just passed it. Like it didn't even say
great job,
score or anything. So, but you know, now you're in mortgages. You're kind of seeing the economic struggles for people. I think, you know, more recently, so I talked to a lot of people in the industry. Obviously, before we jumped on here, you named a couple. But outside of that, I have conversations like, hey, what are you seeing with the consumer? And one of the things that sticks out to me is the amount of debt consumers are in. Going in this next like 3-4 years, you know, obviously you're young. What are your leaders kind of coaching you or teaching you? Say, hey, listen, this is what we're going to be trying to prepare for. This is how we market. This is how we stand out.
So you're right. I mean, it's a tough market. Like, a lot of people are in a lot of debt. A lot of people don't realize how much a car payment affects your qualification for a mortgage.
Right.
A lot of people, I mean,
What do you mean? Just elaborate.
so whether you lease or finance a car, it tacks on as debt on your credit report,
Sure.
and we use that against you, and it lowers your borrowing power. And so if you lease for a nice new car for $350 a month, that reduces how much you can purchase a house for significantly. And a lot of people, and it's no mistake to them, you know, buying a car is easier than buying a house. It's usually what you do first.
Right.
But, you know, I think a lot of people don't realize how much that hits them negatively.
Right.
So it's important to reduce the amount of debt you have to better your chances of qualifying for your dream home, or however much that might be. Sure. But please, I just went off on a tangent there. Can you restate the question?
Yeah, no, just I'm curious, like with everything being as volatile as it is, and you know, people coming to you and they might have a ton of debt. You know, I do think that this is a longer issue. I don't think this is a short-term issue. I'm curious what, you know, strategies you guys have, or, you know, what are some of the, you know, programs that you guys have to help people with combating some of that stuff so they can buy their house.
Yeah, the biggest one is the CHAFA loan, the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. They do an amazing job of offering first-time home buyers, or you don't have to be a first-time home buyer, but mainly they're the biggest target. They're the people that maybe don't have a significant amount of income, might have a little bit of debt. They help you out. If you're in the qualifying ratios for a CHAFA loan, they can give you, well, earlier this year, they were giving you $25,000 to $50,000 as a grant, if you will, which you can use towards a down payment. You can use that to cover your closing costs. And that's a huge help, especially for first-time homebuyers who don't have a lot of money in their bank account, might have a lot of debt right now. That was called the Time to Own program.
Right.
That's not in effect right now. We're hoping that it comes back later this year, or maybe next year. But what they do have, and what they've continued to have, is down payment assistance, their program. And that's where you can get 4% up to $15,000 to go towards your down payment. And it's just a huge help. A lot of people just don't have that money. I know people in my circle, especially that I graduated high school and college with, they don't have that money for a down payment. So using that program that CHAFA provides, it's a huge help for them to get around that barrier.
Do you feel that your age group of kids like are not trying to buy houses? I think when I bought my first house at 25 years old, you know, I think that's considerably young. I know a few people who've purchased maybe 22, 23 years old. But mainly now the people that I'm dealing with are, from an insurance perspective, are mainly like, I don't know, probably early 30s to early 40s. I'd say that's kind of like that sweet spot. Yeah. Are people your age group shying away from buying homes?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was actually just in a group chat with my friends from school a couple weeks ago, and they were complaining about how the housing market is just impossible to get into. I had to go in there and say, hey, like, there is some hope. Don't just kind of like cancel it out completely. But a lot of people in that group chat, and this is just me saying what I experienced with my friends. They were like, I'm just getting an apartment. And probably out of half of the people in that group chat ended up getting an apartment instead of seeing what they could qualify for a house. Just because they see what's going on in the media, they might use a mortgage calculator online, and they immediately just get discouraged.
Are those not accurate, the ones online?
They're typically not, because you're just guesstimating on everything. Like how much the loan amount is and the interest rate, that's accurate, but there's so much moving parts to it, like how much homeowners insurance is, how much the property taxes on the house, which varies throughout the state of Connecticut and anywhere. A lot of people, when they put in those numbers, they're just guessing. And those are important to see when you want to see how much you can qualify for.
What do you tell your friends, or what do you tell, you know, younger people who, like, do you say, hey, save your money, stay where you are, rent, let's try, you know, what's the message?
I think the best thing to do is first take a look at where you are now, to see where you stand, if it's possible. And if it's not, create a plan of action to eventually get there. I think the best one piece of advice that anyone can use is just, put yourself in the best financial position. So make sure your credit's good. Make sure, put yourself in the best income situation, but also make sure you have enough saved up in the bank.
Yeah.
So focusing on your credit, income, and assets is huge and so important for anyone, whether you're young or not, to put themselves in the best position of getting a house.
You jump into this at 22. I think that is a pretty mature thing to do. You know, and obviously you were looking for a job, and obviously you had some relationship stuff that happened, but you could have said no, right? You could have said, no, I don't want to do that.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like this is accelerating how you perceive reality? Because I think for me, before I got into insurance, I didn't understand anything about economics. I didn't understand anything about finance. And I still, to an extent, I do now, just because I've been doing it now for 10 years. How do you feel like it's maybe transformed your way of thinking on how things work?
You know, it's night and day. I mean, like, so when you're in college and you're learning, you learn everything by the book.
Right.
And this applies to especially the mortgage industry and real estate in general. But everything you learn in the book is typically wrong. It's a good guideline to stay by, to have a basic understanding, but you really don't know what it's about until you get in it and the boots are on the ground and you're in the field. There's just a lot that changed. I mean, I remember taking my test. Everything I learned was, I basically didn't need to learn
right.
immediately. The playscape of the mortgage industry and real estate, it's completely different than what they're teaching you in the textbooks. But I mean, so that was one part. But I mean, I think it also allowed me to focus more on what's going on in the economy and just the world. Again, like before, when I was in school, all I was doing was looking at my phone, seeing what the headlines were, reading some articles, like, like this is awful. And usually it's a negative when you're looking at
most cases.
In most cases. But now I'm actually in the industry where that all matters. Like now all of a sudden I'm really keeping up on what the Fed is doing, when they make their announcements. So I mean, it's more heightened focus on all of those parts.
What excites you most about what you do?
Honestly, it's just getting to know people and being able to talk to them. I love that. You know, I'm glad I'm in a position where I can help them. Like a lot of people I work with, they have a dream of acquiring a home and becoming a homeowner, and that's amazing. But throughout all of that, I get to know who these people are and what they do, and throughout the process, I make a friend out of them. Whether they're a borrower or realtors or insurance agents, I get to know who those people are, and that's what I've always loved. Going through school, obviously education was important, but what I loved about going through school was that I got to meet people, and I love that. I love that I get to do that now as I'm working.
I would say that's probably the most fun part about the industry. You know, obviously doing the networking and, you know, seeing people out, you know, getting to know people. That's the most fun part. And for me, it took me a little bit of time in my career to connect those dots. And I've always been good with people, but I didn't realize that was this job. We're in a people business, and dealing with, you know, people's finances and stuff. It's all just having conversations and being respectful to people in general. Let's talk about Total Mortgage and the company. You know, why Total Mortgage? If I'm calling 6 different mortgage companies, what stands out about Total Mortgage?
I think the biggest thing where Total Mortgage stands out is the fact that we're based out of Connecticut, and like everyone from corporate to most of our loan officers. I mean, we expand out into Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maine, throughout Florida, all throughout the country. But our headquarters are in Connecticut. So when, especially in this state, when we're dealing with someone purchasing a home here, the biggest thing and the most important thing is how effective your communication is. And I think realtors can agree with that. They want a loan officer whose communication skills are through the roof. And a part of that comes with the company you work for. If you work for a company like the big ones, they have their headquarters somewhere else. Getting in touch with someone from corporate side when you need questions about interest rates, what can I give this person? Can we give them a closing cost credit? It's hard to get in touch with those people. So the fact that we're based out of Connecticut is huge. Something that my boss says, he when he meets with people, he brags about the fact that he can call up the CEO right now and he'll answer. He'll pick up the phone. And that's just
awesome.
rare.
That's awesome.
So the fact that we have that luxury of effective and efficient communication is huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you guys directly underwrite your loans?
We do, yes.
Yeah.
And you know, we've been rated as the #1 purchase lender in Connecticut for, I want to say 4 years now.
Wow.
And, you know, a part of that, we get that badge of honor because we close loans on time and we do a great job throughout the entire process.
That's awesome. Let's talk about some mentors and what have you learned from some of your mentors in the, you know, the last a year, 18 months, a year.
My biggest mentor is Jay Johnston, who's my boss. He's the branch manager of the Niantic branch of Total Mortgage. He was the one that I did landscaping for, and he has taught me everything. I could go on and on. I could talk hours about this.
Right.
He has taught me absolutely everything about this industry and how to be the best loan officer possible. That's
awesome. Now let's talk about Chris, right? What's Chris like outside of the world of mortgages? You know, what are some of the things you like doing? You know, some stuff that I'm a believer that in order to be most effective and efficient in what you do for work, you have to be effective and disciplined and consistent in what you do outside of work. So that being, you know, how you treat yourself, you know, mind, body, soul kind of thing.
You know, you asked me this question when we golfed, and I stumbled on the answer because, you know, ever since I was young, I always focused on the people I'm talking to. And I rarely get asked those questions. So when you asked me that day, I was like, I stumbled. And I was like, geez, what do I do outside of work? But, you know, I had some time to think. And really, the answer I gave you was true. I like doing a lot of things that are on an individual basis. But that can also translate into something group oriented and have fun there. So, you know, playing sports and exercising is something that I love to do. And if you ask me, what do? I like to run. I like to golf. I just got into cycling now, which are for the most part all things you can do alone. But also you can run with a group. Right. You can cycle with a group. You can golf with a lot of people and have a good time. So I have that option to socialize if I want to. Other than exercising, you know, a lot of hobbies of mine. I like to garden.
Garden?
I love to garden.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been gardening for like 5 years now, and it's exciting. It's therapeutic almost. I like to read. We related on that fact that we like to read books. And
what's your favorite book? I like asking this.
Favorite book? My answer to that would be 11/22/63 by Stephen King.
Okay.
And the reason that's my favorite book is because it got me back into reading. Like I read it my junior year or sophomore year during high school, and before then I probably hadn't picked up a book in years. My friend gave it to me. I read the whole thing. It was like, I want to say it was like 400 pages, which is a pretty hefty book. Yeah, but I loved it. It was, and usually I'm a nonfiction kind of person. This is more of a fiction book, but it's based around the assassination of JFK.
Oh, wow.
And there's all things involved, from just time traveling, romance, all this thing. And it was just, I loved it for some reason. And that's why it's my favorite book, because since then I've just loved reading. So if you ask me what's my favorite book, I got to go back to that one.
I'm gonna have to pick that up, because that does sound interesting. Obviously, so it's a fiction book, so they don't name anybody, right? Or he doesn't name anybody, I should say.
Yeah, it's the only people they name is JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh,
wow. Just because they're involved. And
right.
He time travels back to that
cool.
date, and he tries to stop the assassination of JFK.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's just interesting.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put that in the cart.
Yeah, absolutely. I highly recommend that book, and I've read it a few times now since then. So it's got to be my favorite book. And so, but other than reading, you know, ever since I was little, I loved astronomy. That's another thing.
Really?
I love astronomy. Yeah. Okay. So ever since, like, that's another big thing.
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit? Like, what do you love about it?
I just the idea of space. Yeah. And anything about that fascinates me. So I actually got a pretty decent telescope a few years ago. Awesome. And just looking at the moon, looking at Saturn, looking at Jupiter, it's fascinating. I love it. And just like physics and how that relates to astronomy, it's incredible.
That's very cool.
Everything about Einstein. I don't understand it, but I think it's really cool.
I love that.
So I'll look at a 1 hour video on YouTube, pretending like I know everything, but I just like how smart these people were.
And that's incredible.
Yeah, space is awesome.
You know, it's funny. So where we live in Salem, we are probably like 600 or 700 feet above sea level. Ooh. And the stars at night are very clear, crystal clear. I want to get a telescope because I am also fascinated in space a little bit as well. Maybe not to the extent that you're saying, but I look and I'm like, man, it's incredible. Right. So clear. When we had the eclipse, I'm like, that's just like insane. Like that this is happening. Like it's wild.
Yeah. You put on the glasses and all of a sudden the sun is gone.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah.
Man.
And the moon's covering.
It's insane. So I like to ask a couple of things. So first, I should ask this when we're talking about your work, but what were some of the challenges, or what have been some of the challenges so far, kind of getting into mortgages and dealing with people, different personalities from the buyer side, from the relationship side?
So I think the differing personalities for me has never really been a challenge. Something that I love about myself is my ability to adapt to those. No matter who you are, I find a base, or I find common ground, and we just take it from there. But one of the biggest challenges for me has just been the fact that I'm a new loan officer, and I also look like I'm 12. So a lot of people look at me and they think I'm very inexperienced, and that's an obstacle for me that I have to work around. And it's something that I'm very just willing to attack and make sure that perception of me is buried.
I will say, just to chime in, because at 25, I felt like that on the insurance side, thinking I'm calling people who are 50 and 60 years old. No one wants to talk to me. I think that is a narrative we just tell ourselves, right? Yeah. And I think that it just comes with repetition. The more you do something, the better you get at it, the more confident you are. So basically my message is, unless somebody's explicitly saying that to you're 22 years old and you shouldn't be doing that, I would just ditch that
right out the window.
The window, because it's all about how you are portraying yourself.
Exactly.
And the amount of work that you've done. It seems like you're really committed to your role and that you're willing to put in the work. And if you're willing to do that, then you're perfectly fine.
Yeah. I also got a great advice from a realtor that I did the Par 3 pledge with. She said, we were sitting at lunch and she was like, why is being young an obstacle? And I listed all these reasons, and she just looked right through them.
That's a great question.
It is a great question. And I had to think about it, and I had some answers. But what she said was, okay, what you need to do is everything to show those people why being young isn't an obstacle. Do everything to make that not even a thought in their head. So it's show that you have attention to detail, show that you have incredible communication skills. And once they see that and those awesome aspects about being a professional in this industry, the fact that you're young, that you look young, and they won't think that's an obstacle for you. They won't think that's a bad thing.
That's awesome that she brought that to you. And I agree. And that's kind of the sentiment that I'm saying. Just, you kind of just stay, and I don't mean this is not a disrespectful thing, but you kind of just stay in the lane that you want to stay in, and like just move forward, head down, and block out all the noise. The noise will be there. The more you're in the business, the noise is going to be there. It's just inevitable. Yeah. But it sounds like you have an ability to have the ability to focus on what matters most to you, and kind of just let things that don't really impact you kind of. And we're human though. That's, certain things will impact us, but it does sound like you have a pretty determined mentality.
Absolutely. And the people that I've come across and that I've been grateful to do business with, I honestly, like you said, it's something that we tell ourselves, and looking back and thinking back on that, those people have not treated my newness and my youth as a negative thing. They've been they understood. And I think that's what I love about the people that I've worked with, is they've been in that position.
Yeah, and you have a really good circle too. Like the people, like, obviously Stacy and Jay. I don't know anybody else on the team, but those only two I know. And I know, they really have great reputations.
Yes, and that's amazing to have. And but a lot of people they got into the real estate industry, they got into the mortgage industry being someone who's new. They could have also been very young, so that's an obstacle that they had to work through themselves. And speaking with those people, they just understood that. Sure. And they looked past it for me, and they saw me as a professional and have done business with me, and I'm so thankful for them. Just because they understand. Yeah.
So we got a couple minutes here. I want to ask you a couple of things. The first thing I always like to ask is, what are some things that you want to get better at?
Professional or in life?
Give me
anything?
one and one. Give me one and one.
Okay. Professional. I want to work towards being a top producer. And that's a huge goal. But there's a great book called 10X is easier than 2X, which I mentioned to you.
You did mention
before.
that to me. Yeah.
The higher and the more difficult the goal is, sometimes the easier it is to achieve because there's only one path to take to get you there. So for me, that's my professional goal. Yeah. I want to be the best of the best. I want to show people. I want to do great business with people in the state of Connecticut and Rhode Island, which I'm also licensed.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. In my life, that's a deep question. I'm not sure. I want to foster better relationships. And I've gotten out of this is now become a therapy session. I've gotten out of that. I've gotten so focused in my work, which for me right now is a good thing.
It's a good thing for sure.
But I wanna go back to the people that have brought me to where I am now, sure. and show them that I love them. They're a huge part of my life.
Love that.
Yeah.
What do you see in the next 5 to 10 years with what you're doing with mortgages?
Just expanding from where I am now, and every day continuing to be a better person, better loan officer, and better professional in the real estate world. And there's a lot that I can do. There's a lot that I can change and to attack more. Networking is a huge one. I think especially next year and going forward, I'm going to place a higher focus on networking, specifically face-to-face. I mentioned this to you, cold calling was something that I did in my early months of being a loan officer, and it worked out to some extent, but it was just, it's not authentic. I love being face-to-face, getting to know people. You can have a deeper connection that way. And I think just by doing all those things and continuing to be a professional and studying about my industry, it's going to take me to the levels that I want to be at.
Here's a couple of things that I will give advice on. So I think I mentioned when we were golfing, which by the way, I beat him in the par three. It wasn't pretty, but I beat him. We got it.
We need a rematch.
We do need a rematch. But one of the things I think I told you that day is pick up the book Fanatical Prospecting.
Oh, yes.
Yep. And if you don't remember after you leave here, make sure you listen to this because then you remember,
I'm halfway through.
Oh, you have it? Oh, sweet. Awesome. That book. So yes, the cold calling, I do think, yes, it's not authentic, but it is I think it's a tried and true formula.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
The thing with cold calling now is that it's easier to do. We don't have to just bang on doors. We can go on LinkedIn. We can shoot a text. We can shoot an email. We have all the data in front of us to reach out to someone in such an easier fashion than ever before, right? So the big thing I think when it comes to what we do for work is time management. That's a huge thing, is making sure that we're properly blocking certain things. We can get bogged down in making 100 cold calls, but we forgot to do the networking, and we can just do all the networking and we forgot to do this. If we're not time managing, that's going to get away. Now, here's the thing that I will say that I wish I implemented earlier. When you work really hard at, pounding the pavement to build your referral network, build your sources, build relationships, write the new business. You get to a place where, man, I got here and I made it. I did it. It's awesome. But when you get here, you forget sometimes how you got there. Yeah. And when you forget how you get there, that's when your business tanks, because all you're doing is the kind of baseline stuff because things are coming easy. I'm getting 10 referrals a month from Chris. I'm getting 5 from Keith. I'm getting 5 from Mike. So I don't need to do anything. And then I stop networking. Yeah. Or I stop looking for new relationships. Oh shoot. Chris is no longer in the industry. Keith retired. Mike retired. Now what do I do? Yeah. The thing that I believe is important in what we do from a day to day is making sure that, yes, while we're trying to drive in the new business, let's not forget that prospecting aspect. Yeah. And I think that's I don't know if you got into the 90-day rule. Oh, absolutely. Where he talks about anything you do for the next 30 days impacts for the first 90. It's the most, if there's anything from that book, that's the one thing. That and then the golden hours. Not sure if you got to that part.
I did. I listened through that, and I got to go back to it because I think I spaced out during. I'm listening to the audio.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
and I love it's. I'm more engaged.
Sure.
And when I go on my morning walks, I listen to it. When I'm driving to work, I listen to it. I remember the golden hours part.
Yeah.
And I was listening to it, and it was great. But I think I spaced out during the part when he said what the golden hours were.
Yeah. So he goes. So there's the golden hours and the platinum hours, right?
Yeah.
The golden hours is your 9 to 5. This is the work that I have to do.
Yeah.
The platinum hours is the work that you're doing after the golden hours to prepare for what you need to do. So, for example, at the end of the day, I can get home and I can just kind of sit on the couch and relax. I've had a long day. Those are the platinum hours where I need to be preparing for the next day. So I think those are some of the things that I really resonate with me in business. And it's always, listen, I say this stuff. I don't do it all the time because it's a work in progress in myself, and when I ask you like, hey, what do you want to get better at? Some of the stuff I always want to get better at is just making sure that I'm, being a better time manager and I'm doing things, focused action. So Chris, I appreciate you jumping on. This was, fun. I am very excited to see your growth, your progression.
Thank you so much.
I think one of the exciting things about you is that, you're young. The players are going to be out of the industry in the next probably decade or so.
Yeah.
And you're in a really unique position. Keep grinding, keep putting in the work and building relationships, keep challenging yourself, stay determined. Before we let you go, Chris, where can people find you, Total Mortgage? Where can people find you in Total Mortgage?
Any social media, Instagram, Facebook. It's just Chris Mortgage. That's my Instagram. Christian Aledia is my Facebook. As well as LinkedIn. Total Mortgage you can find on Instagram, you can find on Facebook, any TikTok, everything. They cover all the platforms, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
As well as my banker page. If you want to look me up, you can Google me and I'll be there.
Awesome. Fun fact, we found out before we wrap up here, we found out when we had first initially met.
Oh yes.
We've gone through like 3 or 4 holes, and what's your last name? You told me, and I'm like, man, that last name sounds really familiar. And I'm like, oh, what do your parents do? He said, yeah, my dad's a musician. I'm like, wait a minute, what's your dad's name? He said Eddie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, Eddie played at my wedding with my father-in-law. Did you end up mentioning
I
that
asked
to
him and he completely remembered.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It was where'd you guys get married?
At Fox Hop Yard.
Yeah. That's what he said.
That's
he
so
completely
funny.
remembered it. He remembered it was your father-in-law who got out there and played the sax with him. He remembered all of it. He remembered. He loved you guys. He enjoyed the time there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Chris, thank you very much for joining me.
Yes, thank you so much.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens here for you and your career. And I think you're going to have a very successful one.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much,
man.
Paul.
Appreciate it.